turning back.
Hi, welcome to the Last Boy Scouts podcast. How are you doing, Danny?
I am amazing, dude.
I bet you are. I bet you are. We just got back from training, and you got some big news.
Dude, what a night. What a night. Yeah, so Tristan, my youngest son, and I got promoted.
Yeah.
I got my brown belt, and he got his purple belt.
So excited for you.
Gosh, dude.
So glad I made it.
Dude, it was insane. So backstory, I knew Trip was getting promoted.
Yeah.
So I had called some people because I was like, man, there's some people that really, it would be bummed if you weren't there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because Wednesday nights, not regularly where everybody shows up, but I knew, and I was like, okay, there's some people that I'm like, hey man, you need to be there, right?
Yeah.
And dude, I am like, it's still kind of surreal in my mind the whole night. I'm kind of replaying it because Mike, Professor sold it so well.
Yeah.
He sold it so well. And I was like, what the heck? So we were training, and then he's like, hey, let's get going because I got some things I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then he called my name. And at first I was like, what in the world? And then he had the brown belt out, and dude, I mean, my eyes welled because I've dreamed.
Yeah.
I've dreamed of the moment for Trip and I to promote the same time because our belt promotions are pretty close to each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was insane. And to be a brown belt, I mean, like, man, it's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so cool because like my purple belt by far has been the funnest. Yeah. Everybody tells you that is your purple belt is so fun.
Yeah.
White belt, you don't know what to expect. Blue belt, really hard because it just gets long. Purple belt, no expectations. You know enough, and you kind of like start to really enjoy the journey of jiu-jitsu and what it does for you. And I see brown belts, and man, I've told you this before. I've never thought in a while, when I first started, I never thought that I would be a brown black belt. And now like, it's like, man, the journey is like just getting so exciting.
It's real. I thought it was an awesome experience to watch you too. I personally, when I got the little tingle that Trip was going to get belted, I was like, there's no way. There's no way Danny doesn't get his brown belt. And honestly, witnessing you and Preston both get it, it's been like an incredible experience to watch you go through it, and definitely inspiring. And I thought what Professor said was really true. He said something to the point of like, jiu-jitsu in Park City is going to be better because of you, because of your influence. Mm-hmm. And it shows in the folks that showed up in the gym, those people that were there.
Thank you.
Were there to support you. And I'm so proud of you and happy to call you my friend.
Thank you. And
mentor in this, because we need mentors in this.
Yeah. Especially the topic we're going to talk about tonight, is really important to have a solid group around you. And I tell people all the time, like, I always tell people, hey man, thank you for your friendship. I'm grateful for your friendship, and some people, like, it catches them off guard. Yeah. Cause they're like, wow, that's a really, really, really powerful thing to be grateful for. Yeah. Right. Cause you can say thank you to somebody and it can have a lot of meanings, but if you thank somebody for what they do to your life, today when Professor and I were talking, I told him, I said, I know he's humble. I know him and Mona are very humble. And they always like, no, it's the academy. No, it's jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, it is 100% jiu-jitsu for sure. But the fact that it's your academy and what you do for me, I'm thankful for. Yeah. Because it's changed my life. It really has. On my friends that were there tonight, like they were able to see me get my belt with Tristan. Yeah. They knew like how powerful it was for Trip and I to get our belts together. And what they do for us in our journey, what you do for me in my journey I can never repay it. I can only be just grateful for it and like hopefully do my part. Right? Yeah,
absolutely. But I think it also shows in you giving back, right? When you give to those other people, when you make it exciting and you make it fun for those other people, you can't do jiu-jitsu by yourself.
Sure.
I think that's why there's a lot of shade thrown at the Renner Gracie garage type stuff. Like, I'm sure like it's a great way to get people introduced to the sport. Sure. But like, how do you start training by yourself?
Yeah. You put a gi onto a duffel bag and practice your arm, right? Like,
I'm sure it works. I'm sure there's a part of that gets you excited about it, but you need friends, you need a group of people. And I think that it plays really well into our topic tonight. I really wanted to talk about like the emotional cycle of change.
Right.
Right. It's a five stage kind of cycle. And when you're new to jiu-jitsu, you just have all this optimism.
Of course.
It's pretty quickly crushed out of you.
Right. Yeah. Well, a lot of times, like, you see jiu-jitsu and you see people doing it and you think it's so easy.
Right.
You look at it and you're like, well, I can do that. I'm athletic.
Yeah.
I've
wrestled. I did this. Yeah. So the first stage one is this kind of uninformed optimism, right? We don't really know what we're about to face, but we're excited about an idea. And it could be jiu-jitsu. It could be starting a new business. It could be your own personal journey in life, wherever you're at. You wake up and I'm excited to hit the gym.
Right.
And so you just have all of this optimism towards what you don't really know is going to be part of the journey.
And so when you have that first, it could just start with like, like an idea or a moment that you're like, hey, I need some change, and how can I get that change?
Yeah.
And you have that. It can be so scary to change what you're doing, right?
Yes.
And if you don't approach it the correct way, it just kind of feels like you're always starting something.
Yes.
Right. You're just starting it. And then you're like, oh, I'm going to change this. And I'm going to, like, you change your clothes. Like,
yes.
I'm going to change today. And people are like, oh, you're a jiu-jitsu guy. Oh,
yeah.
Now you're a karate guy.
Yeah.
Oh, now you're an MMA guy. And people never really take you seriously if you keep changing.
Yeah.
But change is real.
Yes. You focus on the positives, right?
You have to.
And I think that there's some of that. We talk about the white belt mindset, right? Mm-hmm. You focus on the possibilities, and you kind of have some ignorance of to the reality of the journey. The journey is going to be grueling, specifically in jiu-jitsu.
For sure.
It's going to teach you some things about yourself.
For sure.
You're going to learn some things about other human beings. I'll never forget my first few weeks in the gym when, Nick was telling me, Tyler, you're being too nice. You're being too nice.
Right.
And I still am. Like, I still do find myself like not putting my weight into people, not, pressuring people. And that doesn't, it's just a matter of getting comfortable using that ability.
For sure. Well, it's funny because like we talk about this all the time, like a lot of times you can mask some of who you are. You can mask those things, right?
Yeah.
But really in jiu-jitsu, you can't mask who you are. If you're a jerk, you're going to be a jerk. Yeah. But if you're like a really good person and you hate to like have conflict, like if you hate to like cause grief, if you're like, man, I don't really like to have conflicts, I'd rather not do it.
Yeah. Like
jiu-jitsu isn't going to change that about you.
No.
You're going to probably play bottom a lot and be like, okay, come at me and like accept the bottom position a lot, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at it as just like a simple form of change, like or simple form of like, how do I bring myself to that first initial stage? What can I do to get to the first initial stage? Of course, jiu-jitsu walk in. Like how many times you've talked about this before? It took you a couple times to come into the academy and to actually step on the mat.
Yep.
Right. Finding, I think we talked about this before. Finding the right academy.
Yeah.
Right. Finding the right people. Luckily for us, we only have 2 options in Park City, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, you either go to Gracie Baja, and you're probably not going to train very hard, or you go to our academy and all of a sudden you go in the room with the killers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
A bunch of killers in there that you're like, man, am I going to fit in here?
Yeah.
And are they going to like me?
Yes.
And you have those ideas. And even if you change in relationships, change in jobs, change in, like you said, you and I are working on our entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
It's terrifying to me.
Yes.
Because I think every day I'm failing.
You kind of have to burn the ships, right? Like you have to be dedicated. You have really in this uninformed optimism, you kind of have to find the motivation that's going to give you a little bit of momentum. Because really, if you look at this emotional cycle of change, it is kind of like it's like a vert ramp or like a ramp, right? Because you go from uninformed optimism to this really informed pessimism, and that trajectory in jiu-jitsu is pretty quick because you're having fun as a white belt for a few months, maybe you get a few stripes, you keep going, right? But you eventually it takes a toll. Right. Getting tapped, getting beat up, learning to defend yourself and just being okay with not getting tapped or not getting submitted or only getting submitted once, or maybe it's not getting caught in the same submission. I mean, I got caught by one of the 4-stripe blue belts tonight in the same exact,
Well, he's really good in that position.
Yeah.
And he's really good at convincing you that you're almost out. And then you're like, wait a minute, I'm not almost out.
Yeah.
I'm almost dying.
Yeah.
Right. And he's good at that kind of a thing. In that first initial stage of that change, you have a lot of growth.
Yes.
Right. A lot of growth.
Yeah.
You feel like I'm growing. I'm changing. I feel different about myself. I wake up feeling different about myself.
Yeah.
And then as you start to go down and you've had those highs, if you're not careful, what happens? You may have a really low.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're not seeing the same kind of like happiness that you've got.
This is true. Like, so in this informed pessimism, stage 2, right? You're kind of on this crest. Maybe you plateau, you kind of crest, you're seeing the challenges. It takes an emotional toll. This is where having a support system comes in. This is where having Danny, the brown belt, Trip, the purple belt, Preston, and these guys, building this community specifically around jiu-jitsu, this is where it comes in, because having that support system, yes, these guys are beating me up. Yes, I'm fighting to a lot of the same position, but at the same time, I'm still having fun.
Sure.
Right? I'm still learning something, and I'm still, I walked into the academy today just kind of in a blah mood.
Yeah.
And I walked out just like on cloud 9, starry-eyed and just like kind of really grateful, one, to see my my friends and my training partners promoted, but then also just having the experience of like, these people have my back.
They see through what you see as faults.
Right.
They don't even think about those faults that you come in with, that you're like, I haven't been training that much.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to judge me because I haven't been training that much.
Yeah.
They're going to ask me where I've been.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, well, how come you haven't been in the academy? Blah, 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 right? And you start to have these conversations in your head, and we've talked about this. You start to have conversations in your head.
Right.
That kind of like bring you kind of down a little bit, right? And then you're like, man, I'm going to jiu-jitsu. I should be happy.
Yeah.
So you walk on the mat and you're kind of like, oh, I'm kind of grumpy today.
Yeah, yeah.
And then jiu-jitsu takes over.
Yeah.
And then your brain is cleared for a moment.
You leave everything else outside at the door, and jiu-jitsu takes over.
It takes over.
And this is where it's really important, because you get into stage 3, and stage 3 can be really the most it could be where people will tend to quit and start to cycle over, right? Sure. They'll jump to something else, and then they'll have this informed optimism about the next thing, right? This is the valley of despair. It's like generally the lowest emotional point, right? It really just feels easier to quit sometimes than it does continuing. And this is where you've really got to have your why.
Right.
What is your why? Why am I doing this? Why am I torturing myself? It doesn't matter if it's business or dating or whatever it is. This cycle is a pattern. It's a pattern that we all follow. And it's common feelings. We get exhausted. How many times have you walked off the mat and you're like, man, I just got beat today.
Nothing went right.
Nothing went right.
I have had days when I've walked out and I was like, I'm the worst. I'm the worst person at jiu-jitsu. I'm the worst. I don't understand the position. I didn't understand what the class was being shown. I didn't understand what they were doing. I have zero interest in failing like that again.
Yeah.
And I should quit jiu-jitsu.
So how do we overcome that valley in jiu-jitsu?
You know what I think is what you talked about. I think people call you. I think people reach out to you. Preston and I, we don't know. People have said, well, it's because you called me or it's because you texted me.
Yeah.
Preston and I, we don't know. Like, we talked about calling and texting people, but COVID kind of put us into a position where we had to reach out to people. Right. And we've never stopped. So him and I will like reach out to people all the time, and we'll be like, hey, where are you?
Yeah.
How come you're not in the academy? Hey, we miss you. Hey, we need you in the academy. Right. And those people that need that kind of like guidance and support are always like, man, thank you so much for reaching out to me. Right. And if you have like in business, I think I'm in that position right now with business. I think I'm in like this valley of like, man, I'm not doing anything correct.
Yeah.
I get a lot of hits on my website.
Mm-hmm.
I get a lot of people asking me questions.
Yeah.
But I don't know the next step. I don't know what to do. So I feel like I almost was like, I'm going to change this week. I was like, I'm going to change what I'm doing. I'm not going to, I love breathing. I love talking about breathing. I love the breath work, but maybe I'm going to go to stretching. Maybe I'll just talk to people about stretching. And I was like, no, Danny, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
Just remember, this is going to be really hard. And I was really bummed out that, I have 0 clients.
Yeah.
Right. I have people that I talk to about breathing. I show them breathing.
Yeah.
I talk to them about breathing and I'm like, hey man, I'll show you this whenever you want. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. And then that's it.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, am I not a good salesman?
Yeah.
Am I not telling you that I'm looking to show you how to do this?
Yeah.
And I don't know the next steps. And so I'm like, well, just keep fighting. Keep fighting. Don't change. Don't. And I told myself that this week. I was like, don't change. Don't change anything.
Yeah.
Stick it in there. Log into your website and see that only 5 people went to it today.
Yep.
I get no questions about it, but I get constant, somebody will show up. Every day, like I get 5 new people that looked at my website and I'm like, well, that's some kind of growth.
Oh, I definitely feel that about my coaching, right? It's feast or famine. I'll get 4 or 5 clients that'll sign up for a period of time. And then, next thing they know, they kind of fall off. They forget their why. Why are they going through this? And I think that's really important when you're personally going through this in your personal journey. And I think as coaches, as mentors, we have to help people find that why.
Mm-hmm.
They need, you need to help them solidify that why and understand, like, why are they going through this journey? And if they can come back to that why, hopefully it'll help create a turning point. Right. So this is this valley of despair is a critical, it's kind of where you're at critical mass. You have to make a decision. Do I keep going, or do I quit and find something else and start the cycle all over again?
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people get stuck in that loop. I remember at a point when I was kind of at my lowest, like I was just picking up new hobbies left and right. New hobby, just cycling through hobbies. And I didn't, the hobby wasn't the problem.
Sure.
My motivation, I used to coach my lacrosse players. Like, what is your why?
Right.
Why are you here? Are you here because your parents are making you?
Right.
I tell this to people that come out of a high demand religion, right? What is your why for staying in?
Sure.
And a lot of times it's their family support system. A lot of times it's the guilt and shame they feel around leaving, right? Or they don't understand. And once they kind of can see and can kind of deconstruct their why, in the case of a high demand religion, right? They can start making progress into stage 4.
Sure.
And stage 4 is this informed optimism. How do we renew our confidence?
Usually, man, I can tell you that sometimes it's like you find let's say like in jiu-jitsu, you've been working on something and you kind of hit it.
Yes.
You kind of you're like, oh, there it was. Mm-hmm. You see it. You see it. Maybe it's a fleeting boom. You see it and then it's gone. Yeah. But you're like, oh, I just seen that. I just seen what they were talking about. And you feel that and you're like, oh man, now I just got to get to that position again. I got to find that position again. Or you somebody that's beating you up a lot, you last the whole 3 minutes with them nothing. They try to beat you up and you're like, I didn't even panic. Nothing even happened.
Yep.
They didn't beat me up. I didn't get tapped and I'm good.
Right.
And in my own personal thing with my entrepreneurship, I wonder how long is this valley of despair going to last? Maybe I'm in a learning period that I just don't know because I'm so brand new to it.
Right.
If I did quit, what if I was like right on the cusp of like this huge breakthrough?
Yes.
I think that's with our podcast. I think that with our podcast, like we're like reaching people. We're like right on the cusp.
Yeah.
If we quit this, what if we were right there? What if it was? What if the next person to listen was that person that was going to be like, dudes, I love this and I'm going to help you grow.
Yeah. Right. No, and I think that's it. Like you have to, and then that goes back to dedicating to your why. Like when I think about the why of the podcast, my podcast or our podcast is, if we can reach one man that finds some benefit, finds some value and, finds some some motivation to move forward or to break a cycle, like I feel like I've won. And I'm sure they're out there. Like we get interactions on the Instagram and, you know, the website. But we don't always hear back, but it is always fun when you get those couple of people that are like, man, I loved this episode.
Yeah.
You know?
Last episode, people called me and were like, dude,
yeah,
that was a rough one.
Yeah.
That was a rough one. That was a rough one. And I was glad that you guys talked about what you did, but they were like, I had no idea that Tyler had gone through that.
Yeah.
You know, and you're right. It's like, if we reach one person that changes their life and changes their direction, gets them out of that despair, because like I said, me personally, I know, my life is so blessed,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I tell people that all the time, like my life is really blessed. I'm a really blessed person right now. And my own mental demons are my mental demons that I talk to you about, that I talk to Misty about, that I talk to Mike about. And I try to find out, like, okay, is it just, am I just being like really hard on myself?
Yes.
Or is it that like this week I was like, maybe entrepreneurship is just not in my cards. Maybe it's just not in my cards. And do I need to accept that? And then I was like, wait a minute. No, I don't need to accept that.
Yeah.
No, I don't need to. And then 5 seconds later, I was like, yeah, but I suck. I really suck at this.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, I think entrepreneurship, just like, you know, fighting through jiu-jitsu, is you have to find your little wins, right? You know, and I think that's why the stripes are important. And people, you know, when I hear people bagging on stripes, I'm like, I get it, right? You don't want to hunt, you don't want to seek those things. You don't want to be a grade grubber and be like, when am I going to get a stripe? But it's also that little carrot that helps you find progress. Now, I've kind of personally, you know, since in my own progression moving to blue belt, you know, I think the stripes are slower to come, but also just kind of like focusing. If I can, you know, like recently I've been focusing on sweeps. If I can sweep and stop playing from my back, then I'm winning, right? If I cannot get tapped, I'm winning. And if I'm defending, you know, if I only get tapped twice in a round by another blue belt, then great. Like I've won, and I'm going to make them fight for it, right? I'm going to make sure that their technique is correct. I'm not going to just tap because I'm uncomfortable, you know. And there's certain things where, you know, you catch an arm bar, I'm like, I'm not going to mess with it. You know, Anthony caught me in Kimura tonight and tweaked my shoulder, and it was, you know, I tend to tap pretty fast on those things,
for sure. Especially with him.
Yeah, you know, they're just, it's you can see it, right? Like you can see the technique is there. You don't have to. You know, you don't have to challenge them.
Sure.
But specifically with the lower belts or other blue belts, like I'm pushing myself, one, because I want to make sure that I'm staying calm in those situations. And two, that like I'm actually making progress on my goals. I remember one class, all I did is focus on, I want to get a triangle. I want to get a triangle. On every round, I'm going to find a triangle.
I think that's a cool way to look at it, especially like how we're going to, I forgot what the name of step 4 was. What's that again?
Informed optimism.
Informed optimism, which I think at that moment you do need tiny victories, right?
Yeah.
And you need like to kind of like narrow down your thoughts and narrow down your goals, narrow those those so that so they are achievable, right? Because in the valley of despair, you need people to kind of like be there for you and to kind of pull you up, and kind of like you're needing some help and some support, and so you're looking for that support, right? And that's that step of like coming out of that lull and coming and starting to move way back up.
Yeah.
Because it could only just be a moment, and then now you're back and you're kind of like we talked about before, of being in those ebbs and flows of emotions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And emotions are tough, especially like for me, Braxton came home and he was home for like a day.
Yeah.
You know, just a day. And it wasn't quite enough to see him. Like I didn't get like what I wanted to see him, but it was really good to see him.
Yeah.
Right? And we had a good conversation about his next step, because even him, he's like, I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to go home in the army and I'm kind of almost done. And then what's next?
Yeah.
And especially, I think men, like we talked about, I just don't think that men are given tools of how to deal with these things, or how to ask questions, or how to even like accept support.
Right.
Right. The fact that like in jiu-jitsu, you need white belts.
Yes.
In jiu-jitsu, you need blue belts.
Mm-hmm.
You need purple belts. You need brown belts. You need black belts. You need every belt in there. If it was just a gym of black belts, nothing would happen because they all know what they're doing. They're just going to fight each other off. They need to be able to practice their skills. If it was just a gym of white belts, nobody would learn anything. It would just be a fight. Everybody would go in there and fight, and nothing would come out of it. You need those different levels that can help you along in your growth, right? Yeah. And that will kind of get you moving in the right direction, coming up out of that valley of despair. And especially with men, I think that we're just not given tools a lot to deal with some of those things and how to ask questions.
Yeah, I agree. So that kind of the importance of learning to adapt, right? Learning to adapt. And sometimes, and this is where having a good group of guys, they can help you. They can help you brainstorm. In jiu-jitsu, we use the term reframing, right? You've got to reframe to a better position, or you've got to set up a frame to get you to a better position or to protect yourself. Right. And I think that's equally as important as learning to adapt is changing your position so you're framed better. In jiu-jitsu, like framing is actually structurally, how are your bones, set up? How are you like physically, are you in a strong position? Whether you're playing from your back and you've got a frame on, you're getting your shoulders in so you can, so you can breathe, or are you getting squished, right?
Which like pressure of life as a man, as a husband, as a father, as a divorcee, as a person who's looking out to go to dating, like me, I'm constantly trying to make sure that I grow with Misty. Those pressures, man, pressure is real. And if you start to feel the pressure and you cannot use your chest to be able to breathe, you're going to get crushed, dude.
Oh, absolutely.
You're going to get crushed.
I definitely feel in my dating world that I'm in this valley of despair. Like there's all these apps out there. There's all these options. And like, it to me, it makes no sense. I'm a complete white belt. Right. And a part of me, like I ebb and flow. I'm like, do I want to be doing this? Is this something I need to be doing? Should I continue to focus on myself? I, for one, am not a person who wants to chase somebody. I just don't want to chase. I really want to attract. I feel like I spent a majority of my married life chasing somebody who was maybe not emotionally available to me. And it was really hard, right? So now as I look about correcting those mistakes, as I look at taking those lessons and moving them forward, how do I get myself out of this valley of despair? So yeah, that fifth stage is really success and fulfillment, right? So achieving those goals, reflecting on the journey, like getting that next stripe, going on that date, setting up that client meeting.
Can I ask you, like, can we dive a little bit into that thing? Because I have no basis about this, Tyler. So like you have to be patient with me because I don't know.
Sure.
Did you feel like, man, I don't even know how to ask this question to you, Tyler. You've been divorced for how long?
Just over 2 years.
Just over 2 years. Did you feel comfortable right away going on dates, or did you feel like you needed to like?
I could tell when I got out, when we were separated, and I attempted to go out on a few dates just to like, put myself in that mindset. I could tell that I was chasing. There were some emotional wounds that I needed to heal and I needed to fill.
Did you feel like you were in that really, like if you were to put it into this perspective, were you in that valley of despair for a long time?
Absolutely.
Did you feel like you could ask for help? Or who would you turn to about that? Because you couldn't turn to me, right? Because
I at this point, I still don't know who to talk to about my dating life, right? Like, it's not something that I've really talked about, right?
Yeah.
I've had some successful relationships. Like I've gone out on plenty of dates. I think currently speaking, like I think the dating world is a little bit broken.
Sure.
I don't think the apps have. Well, they've introduced a unique way for people to meet. I think they've also introduced us to swipe culture in dating, and so it's hard to gauge, right? And so for me, it's been an emotional journey. One, after, a couple of relationships really quickly after my marriage ended, I realized that I wanted to go back and like do some work on myself. Why did I feel like I needed to jump into dating so quickly? And even still 2 years is not, when you've spent, from, 21 to 40 with the same person your whole life. Like,
so you and Cammie were married for almost 20 years?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we were both married very young. Right. So it was like all we knew. And what's interesting is like, I've heard this quote that your nervous system will select a familiar hell rather than the comfort of success or peace, I think. And it's true. Like when I look at our relationship and I deconstruct our relationship, like there were definitely some childhood wounds where we attracted each other. Right. So, not to say that we couldn't work through those if the parties were willing. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it takes two people. Now, so honestly, my goal with the podcast is not to bring her and her story into this and blow that up, but just really talk about my own experience. For my own experience, I could tell emotionally I was chasing something and trying to fill a void.
Well, yeah, and I would probably venture to say that our listener group that fall into your category,
yeah,
would probably have the same feelings as you of like, but maybe you just don't know how to voice or vocalize that feeling of just despair.
Yeah.
Right? Like, man, this is bullshit. I don't want to do this.
Right.
I'm not prepared for this. I'm not set up for this.
Right.
I don't want it. I don't want to be a part of it.
Well, I mean, I think it leads back to, I think we had a conversation a long time ago with Braxton and his friend about kind of the world of dating and how we get these kind of men who just they completely give up, right? They give up completely. Now I don't think that I'm there. I just think that the methods that I'm choosing to use are going to be different than probably what is in the mainstream. And I think personally for me, it's going to be one of those things where I just take it slowly.
Sure.
I don't know what's going to happen. I do have full faith in the world that something will change and will work out. In the meantime, I continue to do work on myself and become, there's something interesting like Jordan Peterson says. He says, like, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. He says something, how narcissistic it is to think that like you're the perfect partner. He's like, why not focus on becoming the perfect partner?
Right.
Rather than saying, where is that perfect partner? Right. And so I think to me, I've taken that to heart. Like, I'm not perfect. I wasn't perfect in my marriage. I made a lot of mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of therapy. There was a lot of jujitsu. There was a lot of learning that I wasn't willing to take that contributed to the end of the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. I man, thank you for sharing that with me. I mean, like I said, in my opinion, I think that, that would be really rough. That would be really rough in that little position and how to get yourself out of that position without any kind of like support group. I mean, I'm sure you have a support group that kind of helps you in those instances where you get stuck in wondering like what's next in that aspect of your life, because you do have a new job, you do have your children, that you see regularly, and you do have this life that you're building. You're still so brand new as a blue belt, and like, the academy, it's funny because we talk about the blue belts, like your blue belt class, Ray, you, Allison,
Stevie.
I haven't seen Stevie as much, and Parker quit.
Oh, I didn't believe that. I can't believe that.
He quit.
I'm sorry, Parker. I hope you hear this and Parker choose to come back.
Bummed, man.
I want you to come back.
But we saw some pretty consistent group from the blue belt that tested, and you guys like are progressing pretty well, like pretty good. I know you don't go as much as you would like to, but you still. I think you think about jiu-jitsu a lot, because when I'm training with you, I'm like, oh man, he's still doing pretty good. Yeah. Even though you're not on the mat as much as like I would like for you to be. I'd like for you to be there like every day with me. But but that's selfishly That's my own selfishness. Because when you're a white belt, right, it's like you're chasing something.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I did take nearly an 18-month sabbatical. Right, I didn't have work, and so I could, like, for me, work was going to jujitsu and working on myself, and so it is for me finding that balance. It will be something. I've seen myself as a black belt. Like, I've just written that down. I don't know when. I don't have a timetable. I think at first when I had this uninformed optimism, I was like, I'm going to crush this. I'm going to hit it, and I'm going to be the blue belt that makes the blue belt in 6 months. And I'm going to be you know what I mean? Like, I had that uninformed optimism, but then as I got into it and I, kept getting beat, and I kept getting there was points where I was going 5 times a week.
I know.
And I mean, I loved that. My body would disagree maybe on certain days, but I loved it. And I would like to get on the mats more. And I am looking to figure out how do I adjust my schedule so that I can be there.
I think a lot of it is like as you make that step from like that valley of despair, as you start to move up, is to just be consistent.
Yes.
To consistently like show up.
Yes.
You talk about that a lot. You talk about like showing up.
Yeah.
Showing up. We talk about that in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Cookie said in his black belt speech, just keep going.
Yes.
Just keep going to class.
Yeah.
He's like, I know people have told you that. I know I've said that myself. But if you just keep going, you'll be there one day.
Yeah.
And even as a black belt, just keep going. In that, and so what it means is like, keep showing up for yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Because that last step is only going to recycle the fact that you're in the next, you've started the cycle over again. Yeah. Right. And so now the cycle starts over, and now you're changing because you've already, you've been through the valley of despair. You've come up, you've hit that fifth step. I can't remember the name of it again.
The fifth step is the success.
The success. And now you're in that plateau of like, okay, now the change is happening because you can feel the change and you can see it. Yeah. And now what happens is you start to make that progression down again of like the ebbs and the flows of what life brings you, because you personally have had a couple things just rock you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I just rocked the shit out of you.
Yeah. I've definitely caught a few to the chin, and I think that's why jiu-jitsu illustrates kind of this cycle so well, because it is so repeatable, right? Because it's every belt level. It's every promotion, right? Like, it's every class even, right? You go into class, on certain days and you're high and you're like, I'm going to do great. I'm going to, tap everybody. And then you just go get smashed and you're like, what the hell am I doing? And then you have to just say, wait, I showed up. I was the man in the arena. I was the one that showed up, and I can be proud of that. And I think that's where jiu-jitsu is beautifully compassionate, right? Yeah. If you can find the success of if you can just, based in the success of showing up, then then how good? You're gonna be able to show up for the next class.
Same thing with jobs, with relationships, man. Yeah. I'll tell you this, with your children, as you we've talked about this, like, I'll never know what my kids go through. Right. This day and age. Yeah. My childhood was so good. My life was so good when I was a kid, and what they go through and the things that they have to navigate in, I couldn't imagine. But as a parent, if we just show up, if we just keep teaching them simple things, simple skill sets, simple things of like showing up, being tough, right? Being okay with your emotions. Yes. Being okay with who you are as a person, because in this moment, in this chapter of your life, it could be rough and it could be really good, but like, what kids go through and what your children go through and what my kids, I tell people all the time, I am so thankful for my boys. My boys show up for me personally, They show up for me on a regular basis. They are so good to me. My kids are so good to me, and they're so forgiving of like my mistakes and my, and my little tiny bullshit things that I do. And so don't forget that next generation coming up, that next group of kids, like, we're showing them, we're teaching them. Absolutely. We're teaching them the skill set of being accountable, but also like to be forgiving to yourself.
Yeah.
Like, don't forget, man, like let yourself off the hook.
Yeah. It's awesome. So I pulled out my journal. For those who are watching on the YouTube, you're kind of getting I wrote down this emotional cycle of success. And I was like, after thinking about today, I was like, this is great. But then as you were saying that, like I wrote down, I started this journal when I was going through the divorce, and I wrote down my emotional healthy family. And these are my goals for my emotionally healthy family: support my children's emotional development, allow my children to become who they actually are, provide them a safe space of belonging that they can return to and rely on, teach them what love and relationships look like, to witness a functional and respectful marriage, to be able to share how they feel, that they can rely on each other, to learn how to meaningfully apologize when needed, and to cherish their unique abilities. And that they don't need to prostitute or betray themselves for love or my approval. I wrote that down. Like that was like day 2 of this journal. I think it plays right into that. Like we are in charge of instructing the next generation. And that was definitely a crux when deciding to make the podcast is, how can we help? How can we help? There's so many ways that we just don't, in ways we don't respect life, right? Like when we have children unconsciously, I don't know if that term kind of makes sense. When we have children unconsciously, whether it's because we've come or we're part of a high demand religion that advocates getting married young early and propagating the religion,
sure,
or that we just get caught up in a relationship and our partner gets pregnant and we're not prepared emotionally as men to deal with that.
Yeah, and if you're in your pseudo self, if you're in that pseudo self version of your life, how much are you going to really be able to influence and propel your children if you're living in a pseudo self?
You're not. You're going to project your wounds into that next generation.
For sure.
You're going to just project it right into them, and they're going to learn to accept that as family behavior.
Yeah. Gosh, man. It's crazy. Like we could go down this crazy path of like change because like I tell my boys all the time, like, man, don't be afraid of change. Don't be afraid of change. Like change your life. Like if you have to, if things aren't going your way, things aren't going the way you like them, change them.
Right.
Change shit.
Oh, absolutely.
But the consistency that you put into, like the things that you put consistent work into, don't stop that.
Yes.
And I have to tell myself that.
Yes.
Like, especially right now, because I'm like, man, I don't want to quit. I don't want to fail. I know like I'm going to have some failures with entrepreneurship and, the business brand that we're building, but keep going, man. Keep fighting the good fight. And remember that like, even if it's the roughest day,
right,
tomorrow is going to happen.
Good. Yeah. If you've still got air in your lungs, that means you're still alive. Good. Get after it.
And even like I said, you've had some big blows, and I'm always grateful that like, I text you a lot. I text you a lot because like you're my like good friend, and so like sometimes I'll have thoughts in my head, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna reach out to Tyler because I'm like kind of like stuck in my moment. And like if you don't respond right away, I'm always like, oh man, I hope Tyler's all right because man, he's gotten a lot of shit lately. And then you're like, yeah, dude, I'm good. And I'm like, okay, cool, man. Okay, good. Because I get a little worried, and I don't have like my friend group is so close knit.
Yes.
I've gotten lucky lately.
Dude, I feel like I'm the same way. I think there's a lot of bullshit in my life that I put up with that I accepted as normal. Right. And I think we do that a lot. And I think as we grow older and we learn who we are and we learn what boundaries are, we're like, your social circle shrinks and it becomes to be those shrinking people. And that's definitely something that I would like to be better at. Like personally, when I do go through shit, I do shut down. I think that's one of the reasons I suck at dating right now. Right. Like if I have something that happens, like I didn't have like relationships weren't particularly safe for me. When you grew up in a divorced family and you're forced to choose mom, dad, and like, your friends or whatever, like it imprints on you, and you learned that like maybe I'm the only person that I can really trust. But at such a young age, like you don't really have the track record of success for taking care of yourself. So you really kind of become this insecure, kind of emotionally fragile person.
Yeah, agreed.
Or if you grew up with a father who has like big explosive emotions, you kind of learn that like, you know, your emotions don't really matter because there's this, there's this tidal wave of somebody else
that can like overpower you.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're like, well, my emotions don't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's, man, gosh, we could go down this path.
Another path. Right.
Gosh, maybe that's a good place to stop. Like, with just this topic, because what a great, gosh, it could go like really good, man. Like it makes me think like a lot of about those scenarios that you just have to fight through.
Yeah.
You have to fight through and you have to learn. Like, are you teaching skill set to your children to help them fight through those little barriers?
Yeah. I would say that's the challenge I would have to the listeners of this particular episode, right? We talked about the emotional cycle, right? It is an emotional cycle.
It is.
You need to learn to recognize the pattern. Like if you do nothing else, learn to recognize the pattern, learn to identify where you are in that pattern and be honest with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of that self-awareness for me has been one of the greatest strengths I've had. And I agree. This conversation could go down so many different directions because this pattern is repeatable in everywhere.
Agreed.
Everywhere.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Gosh,
so learn to identify the patterns, where they're playing out, and they're going to play out in multiple spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Write them down, figure it out. Do some journaling. There's nothing wrong with journaling. I don't do it enough of it as I should, but
Same.
It's helpful to write it out, get it out of your head.
Yeah.
And
man, thank you, Tyler, for sharing that with us. I did want to tell you again, thank you for sharing the last episode with us. I did get a lot of people reaching out to me and just saying how grateful they were that we shared that podcast, and it does, like, it's not going to change anything, right? Like we appreciate the legend of Nick, and I'll never not mention the legend of Nick, right? And the fact of what emotions it brings to the table, right?
Yeah.
And so, thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for, not shying away from that.
Yeah. No, it was an honor to share his memory because he was a legend, and I got a lot of questions. Who's Nyler? Who's Nyler? And I realized I forgot to tell the story. When we grew up,
The Legend of Nyler.
That was the title of the podcast.
I forgot. Who is it?
Legend of Nyler. So in high school, we were into Tony Hawk Pro Skater on the
my kids played that, and I remember playing it.
Yeah, dude, it was like Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 had the best soundtrack of any video game ever, and it was just one of those games that, like, in sophomore through senior year of high school, before Halo, it was everything. And so I had set up a game I'd been playing for a long time, beating all the levels, and I came home one day, and my game had been resaved to Nyler.
Which is Nick and Tyler together?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there was a Nick had gone in and played.
Mm-hmm.
And, at this point he's 5 years younger than me. So if I were 16, he would have been, 11. Right. And he didn't really know what he was doing. And he accidentally saved over my game as Nyler. And he denied the whole thing. So Nyler was kind of a joke. I think it caused a lot of, probably a fist fight, an argument, right? Like, and so, the legend of Nyler was that Nick, he was always better. He was probably better at the video game than I was, but he saved over my game, but didn't really get away with it.
That's awesome. I'm going to give a couple shout outs.
Yeah.
So I wanted to mention Chris Parker's wife. He's going to be so mad that I said this. But listen, Chris Parker's wife has been doing some Instagram stuff that I've really, really enjoyed lately. And her Instagram is Julie_raisingwild. But here's the thing, man. These two take their kids out on some crazy adventures. And I watch their kids and I'm like, man, they are doing it right.
Yeah.
Their kids, their kids eat dirt. They whatever is around, they put in their mouth, and they've done these stories, dude. And I laugh and I love them. And Chris is like, I know, man, she's doing this. And I'm like, dude, it is really cool. It is really cool. And I've watched her grow, and I've watched things. So I really would like to give Julie_raising_wild a big shout out, dude. Go look at her Instagram story. Check her out. I'm going to tag her and watch their kids. His kid has blonde hair, like toe head, blonde. And he looks just like Chris, dude. And wild as shit. But they're like, they travel around, and they're, when they go on vacation, and I love when their kids are eating the sand and the dirt, whatever. The other day he got into her makeup and ate it. It was all over his face. Dude, it was so cool.
Those are the best years. Cherish those years, Chris.
It was so cool. So give her a look at Julie_raising_wild on Instagram. She has a cool story. She's gaining followers, and I'm watching her, and I'm kind of getting jealous because she's gaining followers like quickly, and I'm like, man, I wish I had that skill set. So I'm stoked for her. I'm proud of her. Yeah. Keep it up. Keep up the good work. Again, everybody that showed up tonight, I appreciate you all. I appreciate you coming out there. And we have a belt test on March 23rd. I think that's not this Saturday, but the following Saturday. Mm-hmm. Lehigh at 10 a.m. Should be pretty good. Should be pretty fun. What else? Summer camp. Summer camp is coming up. Registration, man, there are some killer fights going on. Yeah. They've released some of the fights. If you watch the Instagram and the Facebook stories, you'll see the fights. There's going to be some fights that are being released this week that everybody's going to be stoked on. Yeah. And I've already heard that there's space is getting limited because honestly, there are some fights that are going to come out this week that you're going to be like, holy shit, they're fighting? Yeah. And it's going to be fun. And so it's just going to be a really good promotion of our association, the Pedro Sauer Association, and the level of jiu-jitsu that we have is impressive. Okay, so I don't want to call anyone out because I'm scared of repercussions in the gym, but there was one photo that came out, and I'm like, it looks like their heads are photoshopped on. Like, who was it? It was like their heads were too big and their bodies were kind of small, and I was like, I've been underneath that dude. He's tough. He's tough, but there's something weird about this picture. I think it was the background picture. Maybe it was Nick Jackson. Yeah, Nick Jackson and Billy. And that fight itself, man, is it's like, going to be dude. Those two dudes are insane. Yeah, Nick Jackson and Billy Buss. Yeah, Nick Jackson is Park City guy. Billy Buss is a Jeff Curran guy. Okay, 2 4-stripe brown belts that are legit. Yeah, and I've trained with both of them, and I'm like, man, this is going to be a really good fight. Yes. And yeah, the I think it was the background. I don't know what it was, but the photo just looks awkwardly in Photoshop. I'll take some licks for that one, I'm sure. But what do you got coming up? Anything good? What have I got coming up, man? Not a whole lot. I've got a couple slots open for coaching. I picked up a couple great clients just recently, and obviously anonymity is their part of the process. But like, really excited to work with these gentlemen. Just some incredible men who are looking to make a difference in their lives and just looking to really get unstuck. So if you're interested, hit me up on Instagram, hit up the website. Yeah. Lost Boy Scouts. LostBoyScouts.com. I got room for probably 2 or 3 more men who want to just, work it out, right? It's not quite therapy, but it's also, we hire men to hire men to fix our plumbing. We show up with the easy there, Tyler. But I mean, so often we hire the personal trainer, or sometimes you just need somebody to help you take a look at the label, sure. Somebody that can help you get out of that pickle jar thought. Yeah, and right. That's the real thing we're learning with our brains. And a big reason I went in and started learning to coach,
from that perspective. So if you're feeling stuck, or you just want to enhance your performance, whether it's relationships, whether it's whatever it is, like let's chat. First hour is always free, and then we see if we jive. And
cool.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah. High life breathing.
Yeah.
High life breathing is active. I've got everything ready to roll out with the people that want to learn how to breathe. I do focus on just controlling your central nervous system, how to use just nasal breathing and belly breathing with some fire breathing that can help you just control emotions. It really does just control emotion.
Yeah.
It starts your day. Like I said, I focus on wake up. It's the first thing that you do. Empty stomach right away. Give yourself 20 minutes to breathe and do a little bit of stretching.
So important.
Super important. And it also brings consistency to your practices, which helps just keep the fun going and keep you in the mindset of like always moving forward.
Yeah.
Not getting stuck in a moment.
Yes.
Because tomorrow's going to happen. The next hour is going to happen. The next minute's going to happen.
Yep.
Let's just stop for a moment, take some time for ourselves. If you go on there, you can email me. We can do a consultation. Everything is free right now. Everything is free. If you want to learn how to breathe, I'll teach you for free.
Yes.
Right now, I'm looking for 5 people to just take my class. 5 people. Everything is free. You come hang out with me. I'll do it. I'll teach you. It's a 2 weeks. We'll get together for 2 weeks. And then if you want more, we can talk about more. And hopefully what you'll do is you'll keep helping me build my brand and helping me build
That's awesome.
this program. And anytime you want to train, if you're looking for something different, come to Park City Jiu-Jitsu.
Hit us up.
In Park City and in Lehigh, we have the 2 academies, and you can always ask for Tyler and I, and everybody in both academies. People in both academies know us, and they'll point you in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been doing your breathing routine in the morning and before I go to bed, and I guarantee I sleep better.
Yeah.
I always sleep better. I do it when I hit the ice bath too, man. I've been epically hitting the ice bath.
Really?
Man. Yes. I've done 3 minutes a day every day.
Wow.
And my water temperature, just ambient temperature outside, like it won't even register. It's below 30 degrees.
No, thank you.
But if it weren't for the breathing, I don't think I'd make it. I'd make it maybe a minute.
Yeah.
But the breathing is so important. So hit him up.
Okay. Thank you guys. Give us a call. Give us a shout out. DM us. Give us some Instagram shout outs, and man, let us keep growing. Let us keep getting into your thoughts. And like I said, follow along from the beginning. If you're starting in this, listen to the first one and see where we're at now, because we're jiving.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Thank you.
Hey, cheers, everybody. Thank you.
Rise up and turn it back.